It's Shabam, sponsored in part by Google.
The sign up ahead says 23 goes to the right. We want to stay to the left.
How much farther do you guys think it is?
So in the last episode, Nadine, Owen, and Elliot used the awesomeness of roads and the power of their own legs to escape the city on bikes. Without a map, they had to navigate using landmarks. And at the town of Gaviota, they decided...
Vandenburg is on the coast, we're on the coast. Let's stick to the coast.
Agreed.
So at this point, they've been on the road for almost 5 days. They've ridden almost 150 miles, and they've left the freeway to take small back roads, keeping close to the ocean. They're down a pack of supplies, so they're running out of food and water.
You know what would be great?
I can think of a few things.
It would be great if water fell from the sky here. You know, clouds, condensation, a real rainstorm, that's all I want.
That's all you want?
Okay, it's a start.
Does anyone else's butt hurt?
Yes.
Yes.
This episode is called Killing Zombies. Because we're gonna find out whether zombies or a zombie apocalypse could actually exist in the first place. We're gonna try and kill them, but not like they do in the movies. We'll be doing it conceptually.
Come on, man. I can't use my weapons on a concept.
When you see a zombie in a movie, they have certain behaviors and physical characteristics. Let's explore what it takes biologically to produce a zombie.
So what kind of zombie are we talking about? In the movies, we see a few different types. There are the fast ones, like in 28 Days Later, and the real slow ones, like in The Night of the Living Dead, and a whole bunch in between. The Zinskis that the kids encounter back at the house are kind of in the middle.
Okay, some things movie zombies have in common. They were once your friends or your family, but now they want to eat you. They seem to not feel pain, and there's only one way to kill them: destroy their brains.
But is it even possible for them to exist in the first place? And if they did exist, would they be as indestructible as they are in the movies?
There's going to be 2 parts to this episode, and we're going to start with the thing that we talked about in episode 1.
Part 1, the brain.
So the question we are going to ask is, to be a zombie, what parts of the brain need to be working and what parts need to be broken? To help us explore the imaginary zombie brain, we talked to Tim Verstrainen.
Yeah, my last name is really hard to pronounce. My name is Timothy Versteinen,
a neuroscientist at Carnegie Mellon University who studies the brain and who also happens to be obsessed with zombies.
I've always had this fascination with zombies in particular, just because they are always around. You know, there's phases of vampires and werewolves and Frankenstein, and they're all really tied to the same mythos, where zombies seem to change, you know, and adapt as time goes on.
A neuroscientist who loves zombies? That's totally convenient, you're thinking. Well, what's even more convenient is that in grad school he met another neuroscientist with the same obsession.
So we would get into very long arguments about whether or not it could be possible to make a zombie. What would you have to do to make a zombie?
Tim and his friend Bradley turned all that arguing into a book called Do Zombies Dream of Undead Sheep, which is all about the neuroscience of the zombie brain. Tim agrees, a lot of your brain would have to be working.
Oh yes, you would need to have many parts of the brain intact in order to be a successful zombie.
But other parts would have to be broken. Before we get into that, though, let's do some brain basics.
The mushy stuff inside your skull is a complicated thing.
Brain basics.
The brain is actually like a bunch of brains layered on top of each other, or kind of nestled around each other. To visualize this, try this. Make a fist with one hand. Now cover that fist with your other hand. And now get someone with bigger hands to cover that up. Now you have a very rough idea of how this layering works. Your fist on the inside is the very basic brain that deals with the basic stuff to keep you alive, like breathing and your heartbeat and metabolism. Layered around that, there are some more brain structures that do more complex things, like receiving information from your eyes and your ears, regulating sleep and body temperature. And finally, that outer brain layer is where we do all our thinking and our processing of what we see and hear and what we're imagining. And it's also where we put all our memories.
Okay, so let's start out in this outer layer. As we mentioned before, zombies don't recognize the people that they knew before they got infected, which could be because they don't remember them. So let's look at a particular broken bit that seems to be the key to memory.
Hey, Owen, look, a Volkswagen camper.
Oh my gosh, it's even the same color.
It's probably the same one. Oh, remember Dad gave it that weird nickname?
Kind of thing.
You guys want to fill me in?
Okay, so 2 summers ago, our dad bought an old VW camper and, planned this whole trip up the coast.
Yeah, Mom was clearly not going for it.
On like the second day, the camper got this horrible smell and we couldn't get rid of it.
It smelled like feet, like terrible B.O. Oh, it was awful.
Mom bought like 20 of those tree air fresheners, but nothing could get rid of the smell.
So what did you do?
Elliot and Owen are accessing what is called long-term memory.
Long-term repercussions with our children because
These are memories that are stored in your brain for a long time, like stuff you learned in school, or people you met throughout your life,
Happy birthday. You're a wizard, Elliot.
or things that happened to you 2 summers ago.
We woke up the third day and Mom was gone.
What?
Yeah, she walked like 5 miles to a rental car place, picked us up in a brand new minivan. Dad didn't say a word. Remember? Just got in the van with his trip planner and a bag of gummy bears.
That sounds just like your dad.
Yeah.
There are also short-term memories. These are brand new memories that are constantly created, but only stay in your brain for a short period of time. As Nadine is listening to a story she's never heard before, she's using short-term memories to keep track of what's being said.
And the key to memory is a part of the brain called the hippocampus, and it's shaped like a seahorse.
The hippocampus is buried somewhere between your 2 temples.
There's one on the right and there's one on the left. And the hippocampus is what takes your short-term memories and pushes them into other parts of your brain so they become long-term memories.
Look, a Volkswagen camper.
If you remove or you damage both the left and the right hippocampus, what happens is that you no longer can push those memories into your brain. You quickly forget what happened even just a few minutes ago. It's as if you're waking from a dream constantly.
Not only are you unable to form new memories, but neuroscientists also think that the hippocampus is what allows you to retrieve old memories. Think of it like the read-write head of a hard drive. If that breaks, you can't write new stuff to your disk, but you also can't read any information off that disk, even if that information is still there.
So with a broken hippocampus, you might still have memories, but no way to get to them. And this would explain why zombies don't remember the people they used to know.
Elliot,
Yeah?
what do you think happened to them?
I don't know, Owen.
How could they have not made it back to the house? We were there for 3 weeks.
Well, actually, we know the answer to that question, and it relates to our discussion of memory.
All 3 parents got bonked on the head and had amnesia.
No.
That's wrong.
So what actually happened to the parents? Let's start with Miles, Nadine's dad. He was at work in Pasadena, which is about 20 miles from where the kids were in Culver City, when he got a call from Gina.
Hey, Miles. Nadine has been trying to get through. She's safe. She's with Elliot and Owen.
Can she stay at your place until I get there?
Of course. Cyril and I don't have our car. I know, of all the days. We're gonna grab a cab as soon as we can, but with the chaos down here, you might beat us there.
I'm leaving now.
When Miles pulled out of the parking garage, he accidentally hit someone with his car. And when he got out to check on them, he realized it was his coworker, Jerry Noonan.
Jerry, are you all right? You just ran out in front of my car. Whoa, buddy. Hey, it's me, Miles, from finance. Hey!
It's pretty clear that Jerry doesn't remember Miles. But there's obviously more going on because Jerry's behavior has also completely changed.
What is going on?
Sir, back away.
What's wrong with Jerry?
Did he touch you at all?
I don't know. What is going on?
Sir, you have a cut on your hand.
I got that earlier.
We need you to come with us.
I can't. My kid is waiting for me.
Sir, we're asking nicely. That's not going to last long.
Miles was put in quarantine for 48 hours, and Jerry was tased a few more times and brought to the hospital in restraints.
So the question is, what else is broken in Jerry's brain that makes him behave like this? For this, we have to explore the top part of the brain called
the neocortex.
When you see a picture of the brain, that's what you're seeing. It's that pink, wrinkly stuff.
The neocortex is a very complicated thinky bit of the brain.
This thinky bit does all kinds of things.
It allows for us to recognize faces.
That looks like Jerry and Miles. What are they doing in the parking lot? Are they fighting?
It allows for us to have goals.
I should find out what's going on.
It allows for us to have values.
Important to make sure your coworkers are okay because... Holy shamrock! What are they doing?
It allows for us to plan our actions or make a decision.
I'm gonna go tell Susan. Susan, Jerry just attacked Miles and 2 cops arrested him.
What?
It also allows us to speak and understand language.
What are you talking about?
Did you not understand me?
And it's this wrinkly part on the outside that really makes us who we are because it's where our personalities come from.
Damage to the neocortex will lead to very specific types of personality changes depending on where in the neocortex you are.
So, just to get our bearing. First, we talked about the seahorse-looking thing between your temples, the hippocampus. Now we're talking about the big wrinkly thing that surrounds the hippocampus known as the neocortex. Well, the front section of the neocortex, the stuff right behind your forehead, has a name too. It's called the prefrontal cortex.
If you damage different parts of the prefrontal cortex, what happens is that people become somewhat impulsive. They will get very angry very easily if someone cuts them off in traffic, or they will eat food that is not theirs because it's right in front of them. And we see this lack of control in zombies. They tend to not have this conscious ability to make rational decisions. And we think that might be due to damage to the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, so zombies are impulsive. They don't have memories, or at least they can't access them, but they're also really aggressive, which means we have to look at another part of the brain called the amygdala, which
sits basically right behind your eyeballs. It's a little almond-shaped area.
We know from our Zinski encounters that anybody affected with the Knox virus gets aggressive and attacks people. Attacking people is part of what we call the fight or flight response.
And we think that in the zombie brain, the first part is probably broken.
The flight part, where you run away.
Whereas the second part is probably working overtime.
One way to think about this is like a switch.
You can think of the brain as just a complex set of switches. Some turn on and some turn off.
So in the amygdala, there's a runaway switch and a fight switch. And depending on the situation, sometimes one is on and sometimes one is off. Other parts of the brains have switches too, that do things like tell you when it's time to sleep or when you're hungry. So what about the zombie brain?
In this case, the zombie brain is a very particular set of on and off switches that are stuck and don't change like they change in your brain or mine.
In a normal brain, our switches are constantly changing position based on what we need or what's going on around us. But in the zombie brain, this switchboard has been damaged, and in such a way that the switches are kind of stuck, like this. Impulse control, off. Attack, on. Sleep, off. Eat, on. And this would explain the change from human to zombie behavior.
All right, so we looked at some of the parts of the brain that need to be broken to make a zombie. Now let's look at what still needs to be working. Let's take Jerry again. Hi, Jerry. We know from Jerry and the other Zinskis that we saw at the supermarket, Nadine's house, and the freeway that they can walk pretty fast, grab, and bite. We take this for granted, but to move around like this involves constantly coordinating a bunch of smaller movements in the legs, feet, hands, and head.
And the reason we can take it for granted is because of another part of the brain called the cerebellum.
It looks like a little cauliflower that rests just on the underside of your brain.
So the underside of your brain in the back, right? So where we are, we moved from the wrinkly top part to the back and then underneath.
Some zombies, the fast zombies, don't have the same motor problems as the slow zombies.
Problems like wide-legged walks or stumbling or getting your arms out when you're moving. Fast zombies don't do any of that.
In terms of the way they move, it seems like those motor systems in the brain are very well intact.
So to get the zombies we see,
you would need to have a working, healthy cerebellum.
And we also know from previous episodes,
turn off the Christmas lights and hand me the glow sticks.
That they are attracted to light and sound, and that they can see, at least on a basic level.
So they would need to have all of what we call their primary senses intact.
So not just the sense organs like the nose, ears, and eyes should be working, but also the parts of the brain that process those senses. Some of that happens in the neocortex, some of that happens in other basic parts of the brain. So, recap. To explain Zinski behavior, what needs to be broken in the brain? 1. Hippocampus. Busted. No access to memory. 2. Parts of the neocortex. Busted. No impulse control. No language. No reasoning. No planning. 3. The amygdala. Partially busted. No flight response.
And the parts that still need to work? In terms of basic functions, we need the cerebellum to coordinate movement. We need the sense processing centers of the neocortex. And you also need part of the amygdala to be working to keep fight switched on.
And here's the problem. Could a virus knock out these specific areas of the brain while not affecting other specific areas?
Probably not. The problem is that there's often no hard boundaries between different parts of the brain. For example, we talked about how if you damage the neocortex in one area, you might have no impulse control. Well, if you damage in a slightly different place, you may get the exact opposite behavior. A person who just sits there and doesn't do anything. They're alert, but they're just kind of out of it.
And that's a problem for a zombie virus.
When viruses do really attack the brain, they tend to just damage large parts of the brain without caring what part of the brain it is. Whereas to make something like a zombie, you would have to have a pathogen that would attack very specific areas of the brain in a very specific way, while leaving other areas right next to it perfectly fine.
So does that mean that it's impossible for a virus to create a zombie?
Well, I'm a scientist, so nothing's impossible, but it's a very, very low probability of occurring.
Okay, let's take a break. And when we come back, we're going to think like scientists and assume the improbable is true. What's your favorite show you're watching right now?
Super Brain Power Wonder Team.
Super Brain Power Wonder Team? Is that a real show?
Of course.
I've not heard of this show before.
It's my favorite show. It's like so cool.
Well, how come I've never heard of it?
Defenders of the mind.
Yeah, it's so cool.
Heroes of the head. Super Brain Power Wonder Team. But who are these fearless protectors?
Hippocampus Man.
Hippocampus Man?
You can't fight if you can't remember why you're fighting.
His power is to make people forget.
And how does he do that?
Try my forgettable ray.
Forgettable Ray.
The forgettable ray?
Admiral Amygdala.
Who's that?
Time to fight. Admiral Amygdala.
Oh, no, wait, run away.
Not yet, Admiral Amygdala. Try this.
Great shot, Hippocampus Man.
What about the woman?
Thanks, Sarah.
Cerebellum.
Cerebellum.
And what does Sarah do?
Awkward movement magic.
It's working.
That was close.
And how does her power work?
It works so people cannot move right.
So her magic makes it so people are uncoordinated?
Yeah.
It's a very specific power.
Yeah.
It's time to get uncoordinated.
Super Brain Power Wonder Team.
Aren't there two more guys to the Super Brain Power Wonder Team?
Yeah.
Yeah, the neocortex twins.
Yeah.
The neocortex twin.
We're gonna have to think this through. That's right.
Don't they always shout something?
Yeah.
What do they shout?
Left, right, unite.
Left, right, unite.
Form corpus callosum.
Form corpus callosum.
And who's the main bad guy? Who are they fighting all the time?
We will destroy you. The evil prions.
The evil prions?
Yeah.
This sounds great. This sounds like an awesome show.
Yeah.
Super Brain Power Wonder Team.
Okay, in part one, we discovered that getting a virus to modify a brain to make a zombie is highly improbable. But let's assume it's possible for a moment. Could a zombie actually survive?
Which brings us to part 2.
Part 2. The body.
The body is made of cells. In fact, every multicellular organism is made of cells because that's what multicellular means.
Wait a minute. Go back.
Your brain is made of cells. Your tongue, your bones, lungs, muscles, it's all cells. Which is why it's cells that allow us to do things like taste, move, sing, breathe, and think about stuff.
I can't believe they left us alone.
First and foremost, though, they need to be able to work.
Oh, and you know Mom and Dad wouldn't leave us unless they had to.
But they did. My dad, too.
Guys, a million things could have happened. Forget about it. There's no use torturing ourselves trying to figure it out. I mean, look at us. A couple weeks ago, we never guessed that we'd be riding bikes like 300 miles along the coast, trying to make it to some Air Force base that I'm seriously beginning to doubt exists.
The least they could do is let us know that they were okay.
They could have been here sooner, and we could have been
If they
safer
are
with
okay.
them, and not worrying about
They could have
this.
found a way to get to us if they really wanted to.
You know what?
Elliot, where are you going?
Just trust me.
Can we actually go in?
Are you going in your clothes?
Give us all permission. Don't worry, I'll keep a lookout.
This is amazing.
Thank God I packed soap.
You brought soap?
Oh, yeah. That feels good.
Good idea, Elliot.
Yeah. Point Elliot.
Jumping into the ocean when you're really hot actually helps to keep your cells working. That's because your cells are made of proteins. And when it gets too hot, those proteins just don't work properly. And when that happens, you can't think properly. You can't eat, you can't move, and ultimately, you can die.
So a Zinsky that is made of cells and walks and bites and has a partially working brain also has to keep its cells working, which means it's gonna die if it overheats.
The next thing your cells need to stay alive is oxygen. And how does oxygen get into your cells? Blood, which means you need a working circulatory system with a working heart. But you also need to get oxygen into that blood, which means you need a working respiratory system with working lungs.
And you know where this is going.
All this means that unfortunately, you can't actually be dead.
Come on, man!
They always talk about they're the Walking Dead.
The Walking Dead.
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead.
Walking Dead.
How they're dead.
We are the Walking Dead.
You know, if in the scenario we're talking about here, they can't be dead.
That's Greg Moran again, our infectious disease specialist from episode 2.
You're defying the laws of physics, and you can't really do that because dead tissue can't move and can't walk and can't bite other individuals. That takes energy. Those cells, to be able to move, have to be able to metabolize fuel, have to be able to create energy in order to move those muscles, in order to fire those nerve cells that would coordinate that muscle movement and all.
Yep, I hate to break it to you, but biologically, you can't have the Walking Dead. Zombies have to be made of living tissue.
What are we supposed to call them then?
The good news is that this means that zombies are a lot less indestructible. Destroying the heart or the lungs will also kill a zombie. Also, it means that they can drown.
We're going to look at some more things that zombies need to survive. But first, let's check in with the kids.
Do you think I will ever have to eat oatmeal after this?
Wait, what?
They're always going on about heart-healthy oatmeal. My heart feels pretty healthy.
Guys, we're heading away from the coast again.
No choice. That's the way the road goes.
I don't like this.
What's that?
What?
Is it a Krasinski?
Where?
No, up there. It looks like a...
Like a launch hangar?
Like a launch hangar at a freaking Air Force base?
Yes, exactly like that.
Oh my God! What's the first thing you think we're gonna get to eat? Cheeseburger? Fries? Reuben's cream soda?
Stop talking about food, please.
It's just making us more hungry.
You think it's more likely they'll have mushroom pineapple pizza?
Just stop.
Or maybe a side of garlic knots and sauce?
Elliot!
In episode 7, we talked about food. And while you can live for a little bit without food, eventually you need to eat because that's where we get the energy that our bodies need to do things like move muscles and pump blood and fire neurons.
But it also means they need a way to break down that food and to get the nutrients out of it, which means that they have to have a working digestive system.
And having a working digestive system leads to something else.
It's disgusting, come on. Yes, pooping. And because zombies would be pooping but not wiping, they'd probably smell really bad because they're covered in poo. But we didn't mention that because Wendy vetoed the idea of a poopocalypse back in episode 2.
And I fully stand by my position.
Actually, we were thinking about hunger.
Hunger.
Yes, you need a working digestive system to process the food, but you also need the urge to eat.
To create feelings like hunger, another system in the body needs to be working called the endocrine system. And that's like your body's chemical communication system. And it also includes part of the brain.
So there's an area of the brain known as the hypothalamus, and the hypothalamus communicates with the rest of the body through the blood system. So the hypothalamus sends these little chemicals into your bloodstream known as hormones and listens for other molecules or chemicals in the bloodstream that are also hormones.
Let's go back to the idea of switches. The hypothalamus flips the hungry switch on, sending a signal to the body that it needs food. After you eat, the body sends hormones back to the hypothalamus saying, "We're good, we're all good." And the hunger switch gets flipped to the off position.
What we think might be going on is that zombies might still feel hunger. They might just never feel full.
Sort of like Josh at a sushi buffet.
Wendy's saying that because when I eat sushi, sometimes
Always.
I'm still hungry for more even though I might be full. Speaking of which.
It's like he's a zombie with a broken hypothalamus that's constantly sending out hungry signals.
Those dragon rolls were awesome.
So zombies need a working digestive system to process the food. They need a working endocrine system to feel the urge to eat, but now the question is, can they get enough to eat to stay alive?
Okay, now I feel a little sick.
See?
Because of their damaged brain, zombies' food choices are limited. They can't go to a restaurant and order off the menu.
Just pick something. They don't have turkey burgers, okay? You wanted to go for sushi. There's a sushi restaurant. They don't have turkey burgers.
And just like humans, the longer they go without food, the less energy they have and the weaker they get.
Which means the worse they are at catching humans to eat.
So if there isn't a lot of food around, the best thing that can happen is for your body to slow itself down so you don't need as much.
Your metabolism determines how fast you break down food and get energy from that food. So if you slow down your metabolism, you won't have to eat as much.
Some animals can actually do this. It's called hibernating. When bears hibernate, their metabolism drops by about 75%. They basically take a nice long nap for about 6 months, during which time they don't need food or water, and they don't poop either. Their heart rate slows way down. They also breathe really slowly. And they snore. But what about zombies?
The virus must be controlling their metabolism.
What do you mean, Doctor?
Which means they're hibernating.
Yes.
Like bears.
No.
Here's the plan.
We can't hibernate. When we run out of food, we just get weaker, we lose weight, and then eventually we just die.
So a Zinsky also needs food, because without food it gets weaker and weaker, collapses, and unless it's able to feed, it just slowly dies of starvation.
Burgers and pizza and sodas. Burgers and pizza and sodas. Burgers and pizza and sodas.
Oh my! What is that?
Whoa!
Oh my god! Are those Zinskys or humans?
That's a lot of bodies.
Of course, a field of Zinskys.
So what would happen if a bunch of zombies collected in one area, ran out of food, and just collapsed?
They must have tried to get into the base. I wonder how long they've been there.
It looks like there's a fence keeping them out. Look! Some of them are moving.
They look sick.
You're saying that the Zinskys look sick?
The ones that are moving are just stumbling and the rest look dead.
Are we sure that they're dead?
So what the kids are looking at right now is what happens when hundreds of zombies run out of food. They get weaker and they collapse, just like us.
They could be hibernating.
No, we just went over this.
Who cares what they're doing? They're between us and the entrance.
So they need food to have energy to get more food. But they need something else, perhaps even more important.
What about that thing we talked about in episode 6?
Bunnies?
No, see if you can figure it out. I'm gonna play you a clip from episode 6.
Walrus?
No, water. Your body needs water to spread nutrients around, and the brain needs fluid, and your muscles need fluid.
And remember that we can only go for about 3 days without water. It's safe to say that without getting water from somewhere, a zombie would dry out in less than 2 weeks.
The Zinskys have been around for almost a month. So how are they staying hydrated?
Theoretically, we could make the argument that zombies are staying hydrated by absorbing water from all the blood they are drinking from the people they're eating. So we asked a few doctors whether you could stay hydrated by drinking blood.
Ha! I have no idea, man.
I have very little experience with that question. I don't know. I guess I've never really thought about that.
I don't even know who would be one to answer such a question. Maybe. Oh, you know what? Tom DeLory, our hematologist.
My name is Tom DeLory, and I'm a hematologist at the Oregon Health and Science University in Portland, Oregon.
A hematologist is someone who's a blood expert.
So we asked Tom, can you survive on blood as your source of hydration, and are there any side effects?
I think there's 2 issues with blood. One is one people don't think about, but blood is very salty.
Which is bad because if you drink salt water, you actually get more dehydrated.
But the salt concentration is maybe like chicken noodle soup, so I think that would be okay.
Great.
The other issue people raise a lot is iron.
That's a metal.
Blood has red cells. It's very, very rich in iron. And so people would worry, boy, would you get overloaded? But it turns out your body's pretty smart. And so once you absorb enough iron, your body can actually turn off iron absorption. So I think my prediction is that somebody would be able to drink blood and live off of it. It's very protein rich. It's got sodium, all sorts of nutrients.
So it seems like it's possible.
Certainly, our ancestors ate a much more blood-enriched diet than we did, and there weren't people dropping right and left of iron overload. So I think one could exist on blood.
So the answer is yes, you can drink blood to stay hydrated. Which means it's not inconceivable that Zinskys who attack people can stay hydrated by drinking the blood of their victims.
It also means that without food and water, zombies, like humans, are out of luck. The best advice for surviving a zombie apocalypse is what Greg Moran said in episode 3.
When it's happening, you want to get out of large concentrations of people. What you probably want to do is get out of the city. You want to go to your cabin out in the woods, out in the country, lock the doors, and try to wait it out, because
eventually the zombies would dry out, and drying out is what the kids are trying to avoid right now.
Is there any more water?
There is half a box between the three of us.
I just need a little.
Let's all take a sip.
Here, Owen.
All right, let's look at one last thing that zombies need to worry about, because humans need to worry about it.
To stay alive, you need to be able to repair damage to yourself. Doesn't matter what kind of organism you are. Whether you're a tree or a human being, living in reality means stuff can happen to you.
Which brings us to why Cyril and Gina never made it to the kids.
Crazy lady, what are you doing?
So right around the time Miles was getting put into quarantine, Gina was running out into traffic.
8725 West Grimaldi, Culver City, and you step on it, buddy.
No more rides today. You want to make $1,000? Oh, fine. Show me the money. What?
Look, this is all the cash that I have, okay?
Okay.
As we mentioned in episode 2, the human body is constantly defending itself against pathogens like bacteria and viruses. That's our immune system.
Why are we stopped? Come on, can you go any faster?
I have to go slow. It's the red light.
But the human body is also constantly fixing itself. When you get a cut, for example, a cascade of events occurs. First there's bleeding, and then there's clot formation. In come the platelets, in comes the fibrin. That stops the bleeding. And then, over time, you regenerate the cells that have been hurt, or at least you produce new cells, called fibrous tissue, which seals up the hole permanently.
Hurry up! It's a red light, okay? Look, red light. Cannot go, okay? Okay, green light, I go now. Hey, look out!
If you're in a car crash, you might break bones, rupture organs, or cut open your skin. But because your body's ability to heal is so remarkable, it can fix itself given enough time.
Well, Mel, as an ER doctor, you must have seen some spectacular cases of healing, right?
So one of the patients I remember who was as messed up as anybody that I know that has survived was, of course, a motorcycle accident, because it's always motorcycle accidents. And this gentleman had a high-speed accident on the freeway, and he broke his left femur, the big bone in the left leg. He dislocated his right hip. He had multiple injuries to his chest with about 6 or 8 rib fractures. He had a broken wrist on the left side, and he had a broken humerus on the right side. His neck was broken, and his back was broken, and he had bleeding in his brain. But despite all that, he actually left the hospital walking without a cane, which is amazing, which is incredible. Of course, he was in the hospital for 3 months. But still, the body's ability to heal, incredible under the right circumstances.
Wait, that last part was important.
Under the right circumstances.
Problem is that when your body is damaged, especially if the skin has been broken, you are more vulnerable to pathogens that can infect you.
So the right circumstances include not getting infected.
And history provides endless examples of people getting hurt in the wrong circumstances and suffering bad outcomes. Why did so many soldiers in the American Civil War get their legs amputated?
Because they got infected.
And why did President Garfield die of a perfectly treatable gunshot wound in 1881?
Because the doctors were sticking in their unclean hands into the wound over and over again. And his blood got infected.
Infection. Say it with me, people. Infection. Wow. Let's do it together. 1, 2, 3. Infection. Wow. Come on. It's only 3 of us. I'll do it. And then you guys do it. I'll do it.
Watch out for infections. Infections can get you. Infections and infections. What can doctors do?
This is why when you get taken to the emergency department after a large injury to your body, the ER doctors make sure your body has time to heal in an environment that is free of pathogens.
Gina was knocked unconscious and suffered a concussion and a head wound. Cyril cut his left arm and broke his ankle. So both Cyril and Gina's bodies needed repairing. But healing takes time, and they weren't well enough to walk out of the hospital before the evacuations began.
And you don't even need a big injury to get an infection. Just a small cut or scrape can get infected. Anytime you hurt yourself, there's a chance of infection. Luckily, your body has a great way to remind you not to get hurt.
It's called pain, and zombies aren't affected by it.
Have you ever seen a zombie express pain?
No.
You can hit them with a shovel or chop off their arm, and they just keep coming. Now, you might think that's pretty cool either way. Who doesn't want to be impervious to pain?
Impervious means not being affected by. If you're impervious to pain, you're not affected by pain.
And this is actually another problem for zombies.
The reason that we have pain is because it keeps us from doing things that damage our bodies.
As Greg Moran points out, if you put your hand on a hot stove,
you know it instantly and you pull your hand off the stove.
But if you have nerve damage, which can happen if you're infected by a certain type of bacteria that causes leprosy or Hansen's disease,
and you put your hand down on a hot stove, you're not going to know that your hand is burning until you start to smell the burning flesh or something like that. And that's why people with leprosy tend to lose extremities and limbs, because they keep getting injured over and over again. They don't realize it until it's too late, and over time the tissue becomes damaged. They get infections, they get wounds that get infected.
And this is exactly what would happen to a zombie that is impervious to pain, right? So imagine you're a zombie. You're hungry, you're angry, hangry, you're looking for people to attack/eat. Your knees are constantly bumping into things that are knee height, like rusty metal, sharp pieces of wood, even glass. You're tripping, falling down.
So you're banging up your knees and you're cutting up your hands and face, and then someone comes and hits you with a shovel or a car. And unlike someone who suffers from leprosy, you don't care if your arms and legs get messed up.
As a zombie, you're injuring yourself way too much. So much that your body wouldn't be able to keep up, and eventually you'd die. Add to that, getting infected by bacteria and parasites from all the dirty wounds you're creating. Being a zombie is just not sustainable.
But looking at the field of zombies in front of the kids, they don't know if they're dead or not. And if they are dead, they may still be contagious. So it's best for them to avoid any contact.
Guys, we can't go around and we can't go through them. So we need a way to get over them, right?
Right.
It's a military base, so they must have helicopters.
But they don't know we're here. And the nearest building is so far away, I doubt they could see us even if they were looking for us.
If we could send messages with the hand crank radio, we could tell them to fly over and pick us up.
Nadine, I'm assuming you packed military-grade walkie-talkies and signal flares?
I wish.
If only we could send some sort of SOS.
Oh, and you're a genius! I know exactly what we can use.
Are you talking about, like, real Morse code?
As opposed to fake Morse code?
It's in here somewhere.
Am I the only one who doesn't know Morse code? Why are you looking at me like that?
SOS is like the only Morse code you need to know.
Found it!
Mylar, and we need something to wrap it around.
Wait, let's go back to it's the only Morse code you really need to remember.
You can make a Mylar mirror and use that.
Can someone please tell me what SOS is in Morse code?
It's short, 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 long, 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 short, short, short.
Oh.
But it's not gonna work if we don't have something
Use this.
Oh, the first aid kit box! Elliot, you're brilliant!
Finally. It's always Owen so brilliant.
Who's gonna start?
Well, you know, anyone can do it. Morse code's easy.
I will. Dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, 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 dash, 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 dot, 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 dash,
I think it's time for a musical number.
If your code is to mean anything to others than the radio net, then you've got to send rhythmically. Got to send rhythmically. Rhythmically.
You wanna know just what to do to get some help sent to you. SOS in Morse code. The only code you need to know. First 3 short and then 3 long. Just 3 more shorts, you can't go wrong. It works with sound and with light. Even LEI
What?
can do it right.
Hey, wait, come on.
Dot, dot, dot. Okay, someone else please take over. My hand is killing me.
We've been at this for over an hour and nothing. We don't even know if anyone has seen us. Also, how do we know we're not just sending OSO, OSO, OSO?
It doesn't matter. As long as it's in a string of O's and S's, they'll know.
Look!
No way!
Okay, look human, everybody.
So let's recap and go back to the question we asked in the beginning. Could zombies actually exist? First, let's start with the brain.
The brain controls behavior. The aggressive, impulsive, angry, hungry behavior of zombies is only possible if very specific areas of the brain are broken.
The brain also controls senses and actions. The complex actions that zombies do, like walking, grabbing, biting, and the senses they must have to do that, seeing, hearing, smelling, is only possible if large areas of the brain are working.
And even though these areas do different things,
they all look the same to a virus, which would just attack brain cells. So to get a virus, or any pathogen really, to turn a human into a zombie is highly, highly improbable.
But even if it's possible, and we assume that it happens, whatever part of the brain is still functioning in a zombie, it's alive. And that requires the bodies of zombies to also be alive.
And if zombies are alive, then biologically their bodies need what a living human body needs, which is food, water, protection from physical damage, protection from pathogens. Otherwise, the zombie will die.
Which means, if zombies eat raw meat, never bathe, and continuously injure themselves, their behavior is extremely unhealthy and most probably fatal to their bodies.
Being a zombie then is not only highly improbable, it's also not survivable. They'd either run out of energy, no food, dry out, no water, or they'd hurt themselves to death, or a combination of all three.
So, a highly improbable pathogen in hosts that only last a month or so makes a widespread zombie apocalypse that lasts for years pretty much impossible.
Nothing's impossible?
Okay, so scientifically speaking, it's so highly improbable that it's a safe bet it could never happen.
No, man, you're killing the idea, man. You're killing the whole idea of zombies, man.
Yeah, that was the point of the episode.
Not cool. Not cool.
Well,
come on.
Real epidemics still happen, if that makes you feel any better.
Not the same.
As we pointed out in episode 3, in any epidemic, the government would be super crazy about stopping new infections. They want to make sure there isn't another outbreak.
So if they're going to pick up 3 kids that are surrounded by infected bodies, they're going to take heavy precautions to make sure they're not bringing back infected people to the base. So will they make it back to the base? Will they make it to safety?
We'll find out next time on Shabam.
Shabam is produced by Cece Herbert.
Stay where you are. Do not approach the chopper.
Recording engineer is Mixmaster Bill Connor.
We will come to you.
We've heard that before.
Your hosts, Mel Herbert, Josh Kurz, and Wendy Roderweiss, also created the show.
Why are they wearing plastic suits? We're not infected.
Are you infected?
No!
Our voice actors are Steve Santucci, Rose Sengenberger, Chase Zawolinsky, Jess Thigpen, Sean Paris, Summer Austin, Andrew Gallant, Maria Mateos, Tim Toohey, Dave Mason, Jess Mason, and Art Kimbrough.
Everything's going to be fine. When we get to the base, we'll have a doctor make sure you're not infected.
Special thanks to Professor Tim Versteinen, Dr. Greg Moran, Dr. Tom DeLory, Dr. Mizuho Spengler, Dr. Jess Mason, Dr. Vanessa Carty, and Dr. Rob Orman.
We need to find our parents, Gina and Cyril Walker.
Or Miles Prescott.
Someone will be able to help you once we get to the base. They'll find your parents.
Also featuring the musical stylings of Matt Eccles and Saint Cecilia.
We're not infected.
Shabam is a production of Fuliboo Incorporated.
Everything's going to be fine.
This episode of Shabam is sponsored in part by the making and science team of Google.
And why is that? Say.
Because Google loves science.
And remember, if your hippocampus is working, don't forget to tell your friends using the language centers of your neocortex, use that cerebellum to walk over to their houses and harness the power of your cells to communicate the importance of supporting the show. Go to patreon.com/Shabam.
You know, I gotta say, speaking as a filmmaker who is in the middle of writing, a bunch of zombie movie scripts based on derivative, cliched Hollywood movie tropes, this information that you've shared in this episode means that in order for me to create a more scientifically accurate zombie story, I'm going to have to come up with a more original idea, which is, hard, and also takes creativity, which takes time. So, not cool, Shabam, not cool. Okay? Stop telling people these things. I don't want to know about scientifically accurate, and you know what? Forget it.